know how far we've come against impossible odds.
It is 6:21, and we're joined now by Jim Ryan, ABC News correspondent from Dallas, Texas. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Jay. About 2,500 people were there to hear the words of President Bush and President Obama, both of them speaking at the memorial service. And interfaith salute to the 5 police officers who were killed this past Thursday night. Today, Jay, the ceremonies are much smaller, much more personal, much more private. We have 2 of the funerals being held for those police officers. Others are held in the coming days.
How was it? What was the mood in Dallas yesterday? Obviously somber, but was there any feeling of hope?
There was, and I think that's really what these people came here to do. The president, the vice president, the ex-president, they all came with the intention of mind of memorializing these 5, but also of bringing some sense of hope and of optimism going forward. I think that's really the tone they tried to strike. And in talking with people afterwards, some of those who were attending at the Meyerson Symphony Center, I think they felt that these leaders did strike that chord.
The funerals will start today for the officers. What do we know about those ceremonies, and what should we expect from to come out of Dallas today?
Yeah, the first funeral is for Senior Corporal Lauren Ahrens. He'd been on the department for 14 years, 48 years old. He was going to turn 49 in about a week, I believe. His funeral is being held today here in Dallas. He and at least one of the other officers will be buried in the Public Safety Memorial Garden, which is an area of a large cemetery, maybe the largest cemetery here in Dallas. But this small section is set aside for law enforcers, and at least 2 of the officers will be buried in that same area. A funeral also for Brent Thompson. He's the Dallas area rapid transit officer, the first to die in the line of duty. His funeral will be held here locally. He'll be buried then in his hometown, which is about 50 miles to the south of here. And then, of course, other funerals are held tomorrow, one on Friday, and then one on Saturday for Officer Patricio Samaripa.
Of course, we heard from former President Bush and President Obama, but I think the person who has really kept the community together has been Chief David Brown. But I know, he's, as we all know, his background now, and it's been very tough on him and all the other police officers. But he's quite the uniter, I would like to say.
Yeah. You're right, and that's sort of been what I've seen from him in the 6 years that he's been the chief here in Dallas. At the same, uniting with the community at least, he'd received a lot of criticism, private and personal, and quiet criticism, I think, from his own command staff and other rank-and-file officers out on the street who felt that he wasn't taking the department in the right direction. I know plenty of officers who were not too happy with him, including the president of the Dallas Police Association. But this week, at a vigil held at City Hall in the plaza in front, the DPA president had nothing but praise and congratulations for the chief and a warm embrace, physical embrace, over his handling of this crisis. So this has sort of turned the corner on this police chief who might have been considered on the bubble in terms of his employment. I've seen police chiefs in this city come and go, and it's never a very happy parting of the way. I mean, only a couple of times of the maybe 10 police chiefs I've covered have they really left on good terms. Brown, I think, has been elevated because of this crisis and his handling of it to a new level among his chiefs.
Well, circumstances can make great leaders. It's a very tough job to unite both the police and the city. What do we know? Anything new on the investigation on the shooter? What's going on there?
We know that warrants have been served on his cell phone. Police and the investigators here are looking for any sort of connection that he might have had to anybody else. We do know that this journal existed at his home out in suburban Dallas that laid out plans for a much larger attack than the one he carried out, believe it or not, one involving explosives. He had plans. He was gathering up materials for that sort of assault. But now the investigators want to know whether he had help in putting that whole plan together. So far, there's no indication of that. And obviously, there will be no prosecution of anyone in this case unless somebody else did have something to do with it. So I think now it's just sort of a matter of completing the picture, really filling in those spaces that we don't have answers for right now.
And what about those two letters that he allegedly scrawled, RB? Do we know anything more about that?
Well, I've got my own theory about that, Kelly, but I'm not going to. Nothing has been verified. RB. I'll tell you that there's sort of a symbol in the new Black Panther Party of which he is thought to have had some connection in the past, at least. RBG, red, black, green. Those are the colors of the Black Liberation flag. And you see it, and I saw it a lot during the Ferguson riots and protests that were going on there. He may have had, if he'd been planning to put the G at the end of that, if that was his plan, that might tell what that story is about. Investigators haven't said anything about their theories on what that might have meant, but that's sort of my personal theory, Kelly.
Jim Ryan, ABC News correspondent from Dallas, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all the information.
Thanks, Jay.